Formula One is just 12 races into its now 22-race season, but the sport's focus is already on the coming engine regulation change in 2026, which is already sparking debate inside the sport. This has not only caused uproar amongst fans, but especially amongst team bosses and the engine designers. It is even going so far that some manufacturers are calling out the other for lagging behind and ignoring important facts. The FIA World Motorsport Council accepted the engine regulations in August 2022, marking the most substantial change to the sport since the introduction of the 1.6-litre V6 turbocharged engines in 2014. The newest engine emphasizes ecological practices, such as increased electrical power and sustainable fuel, which is another step in F1's goal to be carbon neutral by 2030. This approach piqued the interest of other manufacturers, including Audi and Honda. Alpine, Audi, Ferrari, Honda, Mercedes, and Red Bull, who will collaborate with Ford, will now make up the grid in 2026. These engine restrictions are effectively F1 moving in lockstep with the road car market, as automakers pursue electrification. However, there has lately been criticism and recommendations for modifications about the 50-50 mix between internal combustion engines and electrical power, notably the loss of wheel-to-wheel racing, and drivers downshifting on the straights to regenerate batteries, according to Red Bull team boss Christian Horner. He believes that a minor change might have a significant effect. However, Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff believes the restrictions have zero chance of altering now that manufacturers are on board. Is it challenging? Our chassis designers are saying, well, how are we going to do this? Yeah, super challenging, Wolff said. But zero. These regulations are not going to change anymore. They're not going to be postponed anymore because the world needs to show innovation around sustainability. We need to reduce emissions and we are super excited. The rule modifications are as following. Fuel change. One of the most highly debated aspects is the introduction and usage of drop-in 100% sustainable fuels, which means no additional fossil fuel carbon will be generated. More electrical power. The cars will have a more robust electrical element and will harvest more braking energy, with the MG UK providing roughly 3 times the electrical power. With the MG UK and MG UH, two components of the energy recovery system, the existing power unit generates 120 kilowatts of energy. The future one will produce up to 350 kilowatts. Less gasoline, more horsepower. F1 anticipates that the engines will produce over 1,000 horsepower, despite requiring more energy and less fuel. Over the previous decade, fuel loads have steadily lowered, from 160 kilograms, which is approximately 353 pounds in 2013, to 100 kilos or 220 pounds in 2020, with a goal of 70 kilograms or 154 pounds in 2026. Increased innovation and lower costs. A friendly reminder that F1 is in its cost-cutting phase. There will be a cost cap for every engine, which is supposed to promote innovative solutions. Some systems, such as the MG UH, which has little road significance, were removed. Even though the restrictions are some years away, new engine makers have signed on for 2026. However, the enhanced electrical power may pose a challenge to drivers and strategists as they decide when to recharge and when to attack. Manufacturers are already testing their engines on dynos, but as they collect data, Horner told Reuters that the simulations are revealing certain limitations. According to Horner, there is a worry that drivers will need to downshift on the straights to recharge the battery, and that this will be the fastest lap. This effectively reduces peak speed and is an unnatural move to increase battery power. If you go flat out on the straight at Monza, I don't know what it is, like 400 or 500 meters before the end of the straight, you have to downshift flat out because that's faster, Verstappen said. I think that's not the way forward. Horner believes it is better to lessen reliance on electrical power by a little amount. He stated, I think that perhaps where we need to pay urgent attention before it's too late is to look at the ratio between combustion power and electrical power to ensure that we're not creating a technical Frankenstein. Horner said this will force the chassis to compensate to such a degree with movable aero and to reduce the drag to such a level that the racing will be affected. This could lead to having no tow effect. There will be no DRS because effectively you're running at that at all points in time, and that the combustion engine just doesn't become a generator to recharge a battery. Horner believes a 5 to 10% change is conceivable, with 2.5 years till the 2026 season begins. The chassis regulations have yet to be determined. You've got to look at the thing holistically from both the technical point of view, Horner said. But the most important thing is, what is Formula One? and Formula One needs to be wheel-to-wheel racing. Wolff called Horner's concerns about drivers downshifting on the straights doom-mongers. Do you think that in all reality, we're not innovative enough in this sport to come up with chassis and engine regulations that can avoid drivers shifting down on the straight? The Mercedes team principal said. It just isn't a real risk. When you take today's chassis and put the future power unit in there, there's a few tracks with very long straights where we would have massive derates in the power unit. That's based on today's situation. But we're not bolting it on today's chassis, which are heavy like a prototype and big like an elephant. That's what we need to reinvent for 2026. Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff also said that Red Bull was publicly opposing the restrictions because they were behind in terms of engine development. For the first time, the Bulls will compete with their own engine starting in 2026. Helmut Marko has made it clear in a recent interview that this assertion is false. I don't think we're technically behind. We got people from Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault and Cosworth for the engine department, emphasizes the Austrian. We have Ford as a new partner in the sector. We have absolute top people when it comes to combustion engines. And we have two very bright minds on the electric side, says Marko, adding that Red Bull's new engine factory in Milton Keynes is also state-of-the-art. Regarding this current status of development for the 2026 engine, he also reveals, in August, a complete combustion engine with MG UK and battery is still running. We're miles ahead of Audi, we're miles ahead of Ferrari, and Mercedes is in about right up. Audi, for example, stated a few months ago that the first hybrid drive unit, consisting of a combustion engine, electric motor, battery and control electronics, should be running on the test bench before the end of this year. This stage, according to Marko, was attained earlier at Red Bull powertrains. He makes it clear, we're just passionate racers and we're worried. We're not in Formula One to get rich. We want there to be a really good sport again. And that's where we have concerns. The rules critique has little to do with their own difficulties. Rather, Marko explains, Formula One is ultimately a show. We have to offer the audience something. It can't be that we have to switch back to the straights in Monza. There's a certain discrepancy. Opinions differ here as well. While Toto Wolff believes there's no real fear that drivers would have to downshift on the straights in 2026 due to a lack of hybrid power, Marko appears to have other knowledge. According to the current state of the art, that's how it is, he claims and explains. Every car manufacturer claims that the battery will be half the weight and have twice the range in 3 years, but that's not a fact. Therefore, one should think again about the division between combustion engine and electric motor. It is currently envisaged that each will provide 50% of total output, but Marko emphasizes, you would compensate for that with 7 or 10% less electrical system performance. We have e-fuels. We could switch the combustion engine to 60-40. And the Austrian sees another issue if so much power is to come from the power unit's electrical component. The weight is a safety risk. The Silverstone accident that Max Verstappen had in 2021 can end very differently with such a heavy battery. A battery always entails certain risks. We already have cars that are close to sports car levels in terms of weight and size. But the racetracks remain the same. We would have to make them all a meter wider in order to keep up with the development of the cars, he emphasizes. That's where we should start. The cars have to get lighter and smaller again, says Marko. But that is not possible with the planned regulations. If you need 30 litres of fuel just to charge the battery, then something is wrong in terms of approach, says Marko. The fact that you then have to slim down the car aerodynamically so that it no longer has any air resistance means that the effect of the slipstream is lost, he fears, and interestingly reveals, there are brands that have the same concerns. Only Red Bull has officially expressed such strong opposition thus far. Frederic Vasseur is continuing his love affair with Toto Wolff, Marko chuckles, referring to the Ferrari and Mercedes team leaders, explaining, therefore there is little resonance at Ferrari. Indeed, Vasseur indicated a few weeks ago that it was far too early to fret about new requirements for 2026. At Renault, they don't know what they're doing, Marko says, regarding the former Red Bull engine partner. We don't have any allies yet, he confesses, but between the lines, he leaves the door open for other manufacturers to join Red Bull's criticism. And that's not because we can't get it under control, he emphasizes once more. What are your thoughts? Are these rules going to make Formula One better? Or are Christian and Marko's comments not entirely off? After all, smaller cars with better weight distribution would make racing more fun to watch. And they are already switching to non-fossil fuels, so what's the problem to allocate more power to the new sustainable fuels? What's your take on it? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.